you mentioned Zoran Mamdani. Like, is there a more populist, grounded, pro-worker way that we can get around some of this money, create like a platform? Like, how exactly do candidates counter all this money in this area of big tech?
Yeah, well, one thing that I want to point, because you mentioned popular, like I don't know if you reported on this, but not too long ago in that big mega bill that they jammed through Congress, right? Where it was a huge transfer of wealth from everyday people to the point top percent. They were attempting to jam through a 10-year moratorium on any state's ability to regulate AI, right? But in that very unpopular bill, like that bill was very unpopular. That particular provision was a bridge too far. Even the Republicans couldn't get it through. And I think what that shows is that there is a deep suspicion about this technology. And on the local level, like in Philadelphia, for example, a WFP city council member, Nicholas O'Rourke, he passed some legislation to prevent the unfair, unregulated increases of rents using algorithms and using AI. And that went through the Philadelphia legislature. And so there's work, you mentioned Zoran, there's work happening on the grassroots level and then on the municipal level to begin to hold these corporations accountable. And I think most people with that example would agree, like, yeah, it's actually against the law to form a cartel of owners to artificially increase the rents. And you shouldn't be able to just like get around that by using AI to increase the rents and make it harder for people to afford to live in cities like Philadelphia. And so I think, again, it's about the use case. These guys who are building it, they're not thinking about any use case. They're just hoping that eventually it'll be big enough that it might do something. And look, I don't think when people are introducing new technology, the most working people are thinking like, yeah, wouldn't it be great that to be able to ensure that like your average graphic designer doesn't have a job anymore, right? I think like if we could harness any technology to solve problems that we all universally believe should be solved, like how in the richest country on earth can we abolish poverty? How can we all collectively figure out how to harness this technology and our resources to focus on life-threatening diseases that we need to look at further? How can we create a efficient healthcare system where we're not, we're not facing huge healthcare debt? And how can we educate ourselves in efficient ways and make sure that every child, regardless of zip code, can get a quality education? I think if we knew that the technology that was being developed were solving the problems that we faced every day, we would be more interested in having it developed, but they don't have those answers. And I think, using the power that power is diffuse in this country, using the power that we have on the local level, on the state level, while the federal government is out to lunch because it's totally in the tank with these corporations, is gonna be critical.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And I think that the technology could end up doing some of that stuff. I just feel like as a regular, and by the way, I'm anti a lot of this money and everything. I use AI every day. I'm sure a lot of people do. I have very mixed feelings about AI.
Sure.
But I will also say, I don't think it's any more useful than it was 2.5 years ago. I don't use it in a different way. I basically use it as a complex way to Google things. And so I wonder, like, I think people are excited about innovation. They want to believe that major innovations are coming. But I also think that if years go by without anything significant happening, then those questions do start to go up, especially as more and more reporting comes out about the environmental effect and the driving up electricity prices and the using the fresh water. Not to mention that the major effect it seems to have had is that it's already causing a lot of people to lose their jobs. Yeah. I think you're right that I think there's going to be a groundswell of suspicion and desire to hem it in a little bit.
Sure. I mean, do you remember blockchain and NFTs? That those two things were supposed to radically change the world as we know it. The people were claiming, remember Elon and his robot taxis, the fleet of robot taxis that were supposed to be on the streets everywhere. Like I think like last year. This sort of tech bro sort of magical thinking is, there's a bubble here that is going to burst. And so I think it's going to be more important than ever that everyday people get into the conversation around AI and begin to hold our elected officials accountable to look at all of these industries. Because when these industries gain resources, they turn around and use it in order to capture the democracy and have us outside of that conversation, which is, of course, unacceptable.
Can I ask you one more tangentially related question? Just because you mentioned the endorsement of Zoran Mamdani, and obviously the Working Families Party endorses a lot of great candidates. You're in Manhattan, and I've been following the story of this continued election and everything. But I would love a perspective from someone who's much closer to it. Like, the attempt to undercut and take down Mamdani by like the Democratic Party, which just can't figure out if they should endorse him or whatever, and like the people trying to normalize Cuomo and everything. Well, what's your read of how the election is developing? Do you think that Mamdani still is on a path to victory?
Absolutely. We're bullish about it, and he's running to win. And every single day, every single week, more and more everyday people consolidate around him. That's what the polls show. And also more, it's like, look, there were folks in a number of institutions that didn't initially back him that have rallied. He has a huge groundswell of support from organized labor, from, of course, the Working Families Party and all of our coalitions. And he's running not just to animate the folks in his activist base that joined him in the primary. He's now talking to every community, including folks that may not have voted for him or may not have ranked him number one initially. And so we're feeling really bullish about it. What some people have chosen to do inside of the Democratic Party, especially the corporate wing of the Democratic Party, I think says more about them than it says about Zoran and the movement. We anticipate Zoran will become the next mayor of New York and do it in a resounding way and have a real governing mandate to make New York more affordable.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited for that. Again, like I said earlier, always looking for reasons for optimism, and his candidacy is one of the main ones this year. I will say I'm a little bit worried about some of what might happen after he wins. My worry is that Donald Trump is going to send the National Guard inside of like a week because of how much he and the right are going to be triggered by it. But I guess that's a battle for another day. In any event, thank you for joining us, breaking down these topics. Where can people find out more about either your work? I know you're making appearances on multiple shows, but also the work of your party.
Sure. Well, folks can find me on any of the platforms currently owned by these oligarch death lords, at Maurice WFP on all the platforms. And then they could find Working Families at Working Families and workingfamilies.org. And lastly, they could text WFP to 30403, and we'll get you plugged into all the work we do all across the country, fighting for a democracy where working people lead, not corporations, billionaires, and scary, think tanks.
Awesome. Maurice Mitchell, we appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
It was good to be with you.